What's up everyone, welcome to today's video, welcome to the GamerDad channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. We're going to continue the conversation surrounding what Ubisoft Massive is working on in regard to the Division universe, or at least a Ubisoft original IP that is separate from Star Wars and Avatar. I made my last video and I said, or at least I hypothesized, that more than likely we'll be getting another game from Ubisoft Massive that will more than likely be dealing in the Division universe, or at least would be a Ubisoft original. And some of you have actually basically dropped some of your comments, and I think that conversation continues to go on strong. I also encountered something that was quite interesting from these conversations. So first of all, shout out to one of our audience members, apparently a new sub, V20, for actually pointing this out to me. Apparently, this person thought that the amount of developers that are right now in Ubisoft Massive are some kind of a pocket rinky-dink set of devs that are actually supporting the game, not knowing that Ubisoft Massive is actually a really big studio, having about 800 employees. So this is basically what their comment said in this context. I'm going to go ahead and show it to you guys, and it was based on my last video. So V20 says, I was thinking it was a rinky-dink staff. Until recently, I watched a video by Massive that actually showed their main facility with over 800 employees. It completely changed my mind immediately. And this is the video that they're actually talking about right here, where Ubisoft Massive has showcased basically kind of a dev vlog talking about the studio as a whole, showing over 750 plus game developers that are working within their studio. There also was something quite peculiar. This same person here that left a comment on my video said in their video, they commented and said, definitely a lot bigger than what I thought the company was for sure. And Ubisoft Massive, whoever is running this account, says 3 AAA projects and tech, Snowdrop and Ubisoft Connect, requires a massive amount of people. At first, when I saw this, I about jumped, in the air, because I was like, whoa, where did the 3 AAA projects come from? And then I remembered that they still considered the Division 2 as one of the AAA projects that they're working on. And so I basically calmed myself down and said, all right, man, don't go ahead and start drawing conclusions on something that's not there. But if we wanted to go with technicality, no one's going to fault us, because the Division 1 is also still at least being, catered to or monitored, because if the game was, bugged, or maybe it went down over something, there's a team of engine developers and even developers with experience with the game that can look into things and make sure the game is working. So technically, there's not necessarily just 3 AAA games that are being worked on, or are there? I'm not going to do that, but let's go ahead and look at a few things that I wanted to make sure that I pointed out in today's video, because I think it's really important that we kind of come to terms with a few things and make sure that we point out exactly where we are. For the most part, people have run around with this notion that Ubisoft Bucharest is some small rinky-dink team that's pretty much making and developing content for the Division 2. Sometimes some people have cited that Ubisoft Massive needs to get more people working on the game. In reality, this is not always the reality, because Ubisoft has a different way of making its own video games. So I remember back in the day, I don't know if many of you still remember, when people were wondering what was going on with the Division 2, Ubisoft Massive came out with this statement on their website, a what's next for the Division 2. And so they went ahead and clarified, because after announcing that they were going to be moving away from development, they went ahead and changed their minds. So they went ahead and wrote this to the fans and said, as announced a few weeks back, we've begun work with new content for the Division 2. The development of this content will be led by a group of project veterans at Ubisoft Massive. This will see Adrian Traska and Yannick Branchot staying at the helm of the projects as producer and associate creative director. We're also excited to announce that the new content will be made by a supportive, talented group of developers at Ubisoft Bucharest. In the next major update, we're looking to bring a game mode that's entirely new to the franchise. Along with the game mode, we're investigating new ways to progress your agent, with emphasis on blah, 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 blah. And then this is when they gave us kind of like what's going to be going on. Now, when they said that people are going to be, this game is going to be supported by Ubisoft Bucharest developers, I think a lot of people kind of figure this is just one studio that's somewhere in Eastern Europe, in Romania, that doesn't necessarily have a bunch of people to work on the Division. That could not be further from the truth. Ubisoft Bucharest is actually one of Ubisoft's biggest studios. That is insane. In fact, I was going ahead and I was doing some digging, and I found out that this studio is actually one of their bigger studios of all their studios in the world. In fact, it is the second largest Ubisoft studio worldwide and continues to tackle gaming and technology's most significant challenges. Now, you go and look at their positions that they hire for. They have positions hiring for the Division 2, hiring for Star Wars, hiring for Assassin's Creed franchise. So they're a support studio that pretty much is divvied up to continue to help in supporting other Ubisoft development projects. And they're not just 800 strong, they are bigger than possibly Massive themselves, or maybe they're, followed by Massive in terms of the biggest studio that Ubisoft has. I don't even know which one will be the biggest. That's insane. But Ubisoft does have over 17 or so plus thousand employees overall. So if all of these folk are able to actually somewhat work on different games, and there's a select set of, developers working on a Division 2, what would the rest of them in Massive be doing? What would these 3 AAA projects be if only a small dedicated team, or at least let's just say a group, that's the language they use, a dedicated group at Massive is supporting the Division 2, and then you have a select number of devs working on Avatar and Star Wars. What are the rest of them doing? Do you mean to tell me, let's just say 50 of them are working on the Division 2 in Ubisoft Massive out of almost 800? Do you mean to tell me that 750 developers are working on Star Wars and Avatar? That is not a Ubisoft way of doing things. Ubisoft has this effectiveness with them where they're able to allocate talent to be able to get their games out in a good amount of time. I still strongly believe that there's a project going on because a lot of video game development studios have been, in a sense, very quiet about their projects. Some big publishers have done some layoffs, like Microsoft did some layoffs, but we haven't seen a huge amount of different, cutting of the workforces in video game development so far. Instead, I think Ubisoft took the approach in scrapping their games rather than shrinking their workforce, and will probably continue with their strategy to continue to dedicate more attention to the projects in development. So this is pretty much what we're seeing. And if you go through maybe the other Ubisoft, development studios, you're going to realize that a lot of them are in the pipeline working on all these different projects. So yes, you have 800 devs in Ubisoft Massive. Their 2 major projects are Avatar and Star Wars, but you also have Ubisoft's second largest studio, which is probably almost as big as Massive, or maybe, I don't know, bigger, working also on these projects at the same time. Don't also forget that you have Red Storm, and you also have studios in England like Reflections, and also Ubisoft Leamington, and other studios across the world in Asia who are also working on these big projects like Assassin's Creed, as well as other Tom Clancy and possibly Far Cry projects. When you think about that, then you realize that this 17,000 strong workforce or more is capable of churning out a lot of games. I'm going to go ahead and give you one final metric that probably might not necessarily surprise you, but I think it was a feat of excellence in a sense in Ubisoft's own pipeline that they actually pulled off. No other publisher was able to deal with this. In the year 2020, when we had a whole bunch of issues, when many game publishers, developers were postponing their games because of COVID, Ubisoft dropped 3 video games. Let me say that again. They dropped 3 video games. Not 1, not 2, but 3. They made it work. They were able to pull together the resources of all their teams across the world, change their way of doing things, and were able to deliver their Assassin's Creed Valhalla game. They delivered Watch Dogs, and I think the final one was Immortals Phoenix Rising. So when you kind of consider how much this particular publisher can punch out games, I think you need to kind of maybe put a little bit of room for a Division game. Somebody mentioned in one of my videos and said, "Okay, Captain Obvious." Well, honestly, I wish it was that obvious to everybody to see that a lot of folk, are losing faith in the project overall. And I think they're judging what may be coming in the future with what's currently going on right now. Now, this is not to say that a bunch of people are working on a Division currently, but you can see that there are a lot of people that could be working on future projects in this particular universe. Now, I could be wrong. It could be that they're working on some other project like a Terminator game or something, but I don't think that's likely. Thanks for watching the video. I appreciate you guys' time and audience. Hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.